In our political panel for the day, and joining us here in the studio, Labor MP and member for Reid, Sally Sittu. Welcome back, Sally. And Liberal MP, member for Flinders, Zoe McKenzie. Welcome, Zoe. Why don't we start? I'll go to you first of all, Sally, on the Reserve Bank Governor's testimony to the Senate today. There wasn't much joy for either side of politics here, was there? Because the RBA confirmed that it's going to do exactly what it needs to do to control inflation, and it won't be deterred by people like Stephen Jones asking for it to slow things down. Equally, there's no complaint from the Governor about the fiscal policy of Jim Chalmers either. Did both sides sort of cancel themselves out with Phil Lowe today, do you think?
I don't really see this as a competition of who cancels who out.
No, it's just the flavour of the questions, I suppose.
Yeah, okay.
Set that dichotomy up, I imagine.
Yeah, I think that the key here is to recognise that households out there are feeling the pain. They know that groceries are increasing, that rents are increasing, and what they need is a government that's going to act responsibly. One that recognises the independence of the Reserve Bank, but one that will act hand in glove with the Reserve Bank to make sure that we don't put pressure on inflation. So where we can, we should provide relief, like the cheaper childcare bill that we've put through, and so households will experience cheaper childcare come 1 July. But where we can, we should act responsibly and with restraint.
And Zoe, I mean, that much was clear, wasn't it, when I say there was no criticism of Jim Chalmers' fiscal strategy, which the Governor agreed was neutral. You know, it's not accommodative or anything.
Did, yeah.
So he actually almost endorsed some of the productivity measures that this government is putting in place. And as Sally points out, childcare is one of them. So were there any points established by your side,
Look,
do you think,
I think the Reserve Bank Governor showed his neutrality and independence as we would want from him, and as I think he stressed at multiple turns. But he did stress that that lever of interest rates is one of few, well, the only one they have, and indeed looking for more from the broader economy to restrain demand and restrain inflation. He pointed to still ongoing demand in various areas, and we're at 7.8% inflation already, and it looks like it will get worse before it gets better.
People mightn't like it, and Phil Lowe made this point, but he's fully within his rights to just keep going, isn't he, with the stated objective to bring inflation
That is their
control?
job. They have a target rate of 2 to 3%, and as I said, interest rates is the only lever they have. And so I think he explained that. He explained the consensus reached around the board. He had another board member with them, and they showed all the maturity and reflection you would hope from an independent Reserve Bank.
Do you accept that, Sally, that as unpopular as it might be, Phil Lowe acknowledges it actually is. He gets letters to that effect to his own office all the time from borrowers. He has a charter to do what he's doing, which is bring inflation under control. I wonder if in messaging that, he was saying to critics in this building, you won't deter me.
I don't think it's a popularity contest, and I think we ought to take the personalities out of it.
Sure.
So the Reserve...
It's the board, right?
It's the board. Philip Lowe is unfortunately the face of it. I think he would prefer not to be, but they have a charter that they've got to follow, and they've got to act independently, and I think he's sent that message now, and it's something that I think the coalition and the government have always worked towards, is making sure that the RBA does act independently without interference from government.
It's meant to slow demand and spending, and look, it does appear to be working in some respects, Zoe, because we got some CoreLogic property data out today to say that in regional markets, some in particular, it's coming right off. Does that cause any alarm about, you know, this delayed reaction phenomenon that we...
Do you mean in terms of demand?
Well, purchase prices, actually.
Oh, in properties,
The prices have come off, so the question then becomes, you know, what if we're out of phase here, if the rates already in the pipeline are doing what they're meant to do?
Yeah, some people may end up in a negative equity situation. So we have a real issue in terms of people facing negative equity, some people facing great mortgage stress where more than 30% of their income is going into their mortgage, and then the flow-on effect for renters who are facing a 10% roughly increase in their rent. Add that to energy bills, And Australian families have a right to be reasonably concerned, wondering where the relief of which the Treasurer speaks so often is coming from.
Well, that's about the middle of this year, isn't it? At least on the energy side of things, the price caps that have been put in place late last year are supposed to flow through on energy bills roughly when?
Yeah, that's right. So roughly around the middle of the year. But families will also see an immediate relief on their medications. So that drop happened in January this year, as well as our push to see wages increase. I think that's a critical piece of this as well. If things are getting more expensive, but your wages aren't rising to meet that expense, then you are experiencing that pain even more. Yeah. And I think what ought not to be lost in this discussion as well is that we are in a housing affordability crisis, absolutely, but there have been real supply issues. There haven't been enough homes built, and that's why the price of housing has increased. And so interest rates are hitting people because they're having to pay more for homes.
Yeah, and look, there are a few things that your side, Zoe, looks like opposing. The Housing Australia Future Fund is one. We won't necessarily take a deep dive on that, but another that I'm interested in exploring with you is the safeguard mechanism. As we were discussing with Simon Birmingham a little earlier, are you clear on exactly how your party will express its dissatisfaction on that? Because only a very small part of it is legislation. The rest can be signed off. Does that mean you'll be racing, not you, but your party will be racing into the Senate to kill it dead with what they call a disallowance?
Let me go back for a moment just to the housing point. Our priority has always been to get people into their own home, and that is a record of which we are justifiably proud from the last term of government, in which we did help 300,000 people get into their first home. Yes, there is a housing future fund, but it's based on borrowings. And if it had the same track record as the future fund did last year, it would have actually lost money last year rather than made money to put into housing. So we object to the mechanism whilst recognising that there is a housing crisis around the country. Now, in terms of safeguards, I'm not really sure that we need to run in and do anything, because it sounds like between the government and the Greens, they've already got their lines caught up, and they're quite clear that the Greens won't let them go forward unless they abolish all investment into coal and gas.
And will that happen, Sally? Do you think Chris Bowen is open to meeting the Greens' demands? It doesn't exactly sound like that to me, but there is a three-way tussle going on here, isn't there?
Well, I mean, ultimately what we like to see with climate change is for the whole Parliament to get on board. I think there was a resounding result from the federal election, and that was that the electorate wants action on climate change. They want to end the climate wars, and they don't want the coalition or the Greens bringing those climate wars back. Yeah. So how can we be working together on the safeguard mechanism, which was a coalition policy? How can we be working on that to strengthen it and make sure that it actually is supposed to be doing what it is meant to do, which is reduce our emissions?
That's the objective, but can you accommodate the Greens' demand in any way? It doesn't sound from Chris Bowen that you can on no new coal and gas.
Oh, I'd say to the Greens, let's not repeat the mistakes you made in 2009. The mistakes you made then led us down this path of inaction. I think they have become a party which is so beholden to the perfect that they refuse to see what is right in front of them. And I tell them to just get on board with this. All
right. Well, you've been told, Adam Bandt, and I think there's still a bit of negotiation to go on that one. Zoe McKenzie, Sally Sidhu, great chat. Thanks, both of you, for joining us today.